by many of the commission structure, whatever it is, but they do not have the privilege of promoting or advising the product that the client requests, whereas we have that privilege if we want. The whole thing is if we want that. That is more important. Thank you.
Thank you. More thoughts on marketing and business development for the advisors.
I think if AMCs, so Bala, Nimesh, Ashish, whoever is in the audience, if the AMCs do bring out the product in terms of putting multiple asset classes into one unit price, okay? What we're trying to do here is hide the volatility in one unit price. I think that is what is needed. Then I think there's a huge opportunity for IFAs for the lower end client to focus on giving them multi-asset class package solution and focus on touching people that have never had mutual funds before. I think that's a given. I also think that, I know insurance is a bad word, it seems to be everywhere, but I just don't understand why. Because I think when you start talking to someone for the first time, rather than talking about mutual funds, you need to first say, you know what, where are you in your overall cycle? If you've taken you've insured your assets and your family and stuff, then you can start talking about mutual funds. I think that's on the retail, on the sort of mass side. The higher up you go, the more HNI client you get, the more I think both the client and the advisor what needs to be seen to be doing something. So the action, hand on heart, if you think you can select funds better than what Dhiren can, given his access to the AMCs, then you can do it. But I think you should maybe outsource it to people like Dhiren. On the fund selection, same thing on the asset allocation, there are people out there that can give you guidance on a set of strategic asset allocations. I don't think there's people in India that can do tactical, that I've seen. Certainly in Australian markets and stuff, we as Mercer and Van Eyck before that used to give guidance to IFAs on pre-packaged model portfolios. So if the AMC couldn't package it, then we packaged it. The only downside of that was that the investors still got to see 12 or 15 unit prices, if that's how many mutual funds there were in a portfolio. But the IFA could then still focus on, yes, you have 12, 15, but look at the overall portfolio. Stop focusing on the individual unit prices, but focus on if you put it in 100 rupees overall, then where have your portfolio gone? So I would say focus on that. The third thing I would say is, I think once you have the qualifications and keep your knowledge up to date, so if you can keep up with what's going on all around the world, your credibility goes up, and then you can focus on, just as I said before, coaching. Yeah, I think there are pretty much the things I would say, and technology can help you in that, obviously. I think one of the things that I've learned, again, and my mother, by the way, is an IFA, and she has been for 30 years. She started in insurance and has continued as a CFP. One of the things that she tells me, anytime markets are volatile, that's the time she gets on the phone proactively and calls all her top clients and tells them what's going on. And the clients just love her for it. The clients really don't ask her about the portfolio at all. They take her out to lunch, to dinner. I mean, I'm amazed how many people she's friends with in terms of her clients, because all they want to know is be reassured that everything is going to be okay, that she has appropriately diversified the portfolio and everything is going to be fine in the long run. So I think if you focus on where you can add value, is it really fund selection or asset allocation, or is it really focus on communication? Technology can help in terms of you communicating more regularly. All the AMCs will give you any amount of material you want. I also think the communication gets too complicated. I think if you talk to a retail investor, you start talking about NAVs and modified duration and stuff. I mean, you lose most of the advisors, let alone investors. So I think if you keep it simple, I think if you learn the art of storytelling, that's a worthwhile investment. Every time I pick up a book in the bookshop on popular science, I just love it, because I think they take a complicated topic, and if they can present it easily, that's a skill to have. Similarly for investments, if you can master the art of explaining investment concepts in simple English to your investors, focus on material on that, I think that's another thing that I'd say is something I've learned over time.
Great. Before we open up the discussion, I'll ask Dhiren, your last words on what you'd like the advisors to do to reframe the business.
No, one is that, what Uncle was saying, that strategic and tactical. And my sense is that, Indian investors, the way they have perceived mutual fund, it is entirely tactical. There is nothing strategic about it. And so that is why we see that there is this great seasonality, there is this great short-term focus. Everybody thinks that this is a great, this is the most frequently asked question, that is it a good time to be getting into a mutual fund? So if I get this question so often, I can understand. So I think, this is, I would say that this is glass half full or empty, because this is a huge opportunity. People being, you holding their hand through the whole process for a lifetime savings and accumulation in a smarter way or in an optimal way. And so far what we have, while the earlier part of the discussion was on, you sent me a message that people after 20 years are still saying that mutual fund is in its state of infancy. After 20 years it is in the state of infancy entirely because, it has not been able to provide a reasonable solution. It doesn't get into their framework. It is still tactical. It is not, I cannot think of many investors who will be very upset that they don't have mutual fund to access and they can't do without it. It is not mainstream. It is still very peripheral niche. There lies the opportunity, and I think there lies the failure so far.
Uma?
Okay, I think because of the very stringent disclosure norms and the way regulation in the industry has worked, mutual funds have, there is an overload of information when it comes to mutual funds. Now, I tire of seeing media, popular discussion and others simply picking up numbers given by the mutual funds or numbers provided by Divi. I think the problem to solve is lazy research. What is yours in the story? Let's stop kind of picking up what is available and saying, last 5 years there has been no return. Now that last 5 years is today to the last 5 years, right? So it's just one point to another point. I'm not saying that advisor should get into math. I'm only saying your investor is not stitching his own clothes, he is not cutting his own hair. Why is he managing his own portfolio? So the point is that where do we have our own stories here? In the market, when it comes to conversations about mutual funds, I think a predominant amount of these conversations is on borrowed product literature. There are advisors who are here who are movie enthusiasts, who have you are food enthusiasts, who travel. Create your stories. There are stories about markets and stories about risk around you. If you cannot reach your office from home at a fixed point of time every day, depending on traffic jam, potholes and rains, that's risk. You wanted to go from point A to point B, but you couldn't make it in that time. If your mango tree at the backyard did not sprout one leaf every day, it is fine. That's also seasonality and cyclicality. So your investor is seeing risk every day. In my classroom, so many years I've been in my classroom, I would tell you about example of my friend Ramchandran, right? Who wanted to marry, a woman who earned 3 lakhs a month, looked very fair, took care of the in-laws and also cooked. He didn't get married, right? So the point really is that because of this overload of information, which is so overtly technical, please remember, having been in product communication with the mutual fund, I can tell you that compliance is so stringent that it is impossible for mutual funds to bring innovative stories into the media. Somebody was asking about questions of pull. Well, your hands and legs are tied and you are asking us to bowl a sixer, bat a sixer. What is possible? So there are stringent disclosure norms for mutual funds. So don't simply pick up that literature and go to the investor with technical information. Create your own stories. Simple, nice stories which tell the investor you're driving a pothole road and still reaching your office in time. So you're going to be fine. I think advisors need to invest on communication, as Sadiq was pointing out, and invest on coaching, as Hansi was pointing out, and use that research the rate provides, but create your own story.
Fabulous.
Last word?
The last one.
All right. I think the right advisors who are on the right direction will never go out of business or their practice. For a very simple reason that I think investors or clients, they are either lazy or busy or crazy. All right. Lazy.
Repeat it.
Investors are either invest or even clients. I do not really like to call investors the clients. They are either lazy, busy or crazy. Lazy because they do not have the inclination to manage their own money. Okay, busy because they have n number of other things to do. Family, job, other activities, entertainment. Who has the time to manage the money? And it's such a boring subject. And last, crazy because they are overwhelmed or there's too much of information overload nowadays. All right. So, and the people who try and manage their own money, they are hyperactive when it comes to managing money. And at the end of the day, they need a handholder, a good trusted advisor. To that extent, just get this, the points which most of us have been trying to tell the same thing. Get your direction right, get your practice right. You do not have to worry about your future. And in fact, all these things what we are speaking today, where 2 or 3 years back, I think these points were being spoken for the growth of the financial advisor. But nowadays, or at least today, I think these points what we are all speaking has become a matter of survival, not really a growth.
Not a matter of choice.
Thank you.
Answer.
I think I pretty much said what I wanted to say before. The only one I think I would say is if we don't do in terms of focusing on our value add, be conscious that technology can disintermediate part of what IFAs or what advisors do. An example of that is at Mercer, for example, we used to advise very large corporates, and we would give them what we called scaled advice, 4 levels. The first level was a website that had a lot of educational material. The second level was workplace workshops, where we would go and do seminars at their workplace. The third level was limited helpline service. So people could call up and ask about, oh, my superannuation balance, markets are falling, whatever, what should I do? Panic, panic, give me some advice. These 3 levels were paid for by the corporate, and only the 4th level was actually personal advice, where the client, the employee of that company could call up a personal advisor, a Mercer salaried employee, to get personal advice to his or her situation and their family. And where we were taking it was quite involved, to the point where I think a lot of, so 80% of that company's employee base was accessing that service and actually doing just fine. So if their needs weren't complicated, using technology, big corporates were able to go and give advice. Now I think everyone should get personal advice beyond the point. But all I'd say is if we don't focus on where we add value, then technology can go a long part of the way in the future. Thanks.
Great. Dhiren, one last word from Dhiren, and then we open out the...
Yeah, one particular point I was, quite intrigued by the pool being created by mutual fund. I think, it is the least sold story of the decade or so, because, I know a lot of financial products. This is the only thing about which I know that there are large number of happy customers, and people don't know the story. And let me just cite you some examples. The not so great fund. If somebody would have been a regular investor, let's look at the oldest Indian mutual fund, which had a patch of lousy years, great years, some distinct advantage, the master share, completing over 25 years. Over the last 25 years, despite all its mismanagement, some great management, some turnaround, which means that it has been through a full cycle of cyclicality. And its return is, 2.5 times more than what the fixed return income would have been. I'm just referring to point return. Then looking at, any fund which has existed for over the past 15 years, SIP return, the number of funds which are able to beat the market in India is still, that number looks quite amazing to all the foreigners I have interaction with. which is about 80-85% on a 10-year basis. On a 5-year basis, it's still intact at 60-65%, which is unheard of, which means that either, our fund managers are brilliant, or it is much easier to defeat the benchmark, but somehow they do it. But this in itself is a great story to be taken to, but nobody has actually taken the pain. If this remains this tactical, seasonal, fashionable thing to be hawked, then I don't think the whole story will ever be taken to the customer, and you will not get your due, which you deserve.
Great, great.
Sorry, Dhiren, on that point though, can I sort of just say though, isn't part of the problem getting people into capital markets in terms of getting the beta exposure to the markets, let alone the alpha? I mean, are we really sort of saying you should enter mutual funds so that they beat the market? Or are we saying you should get mutual funds because you're getting capital market exposure rather than fixed term deposits?
I mean, he's making a different point. He's not.
I'm not referring to the beta or the alpha bit, but people don't have equity exposure in the first place. Somehow they should get it.
I think the point Dhiren is trying to make is the story is not being told well enough. Really? Wow.
We are running a little bit short of time, so we'll have just a couple of questions.
Sadiq said, B15 cities have already been approaching to banks. Ma'am, the first question is, don't you think in last 5 years, right from 2008 to 2013, investors who have been into industry or have been stayed here have almost lost their money? Not about the profits, they have capital, they've eroded their capital up to 50% and 70% into most of the funds. Whatever they put in money into banks, I haven't finished with my question. They have at least, those who have put in money over there in FDs, they have at least secured 8%, 9% over there. Don't you think an investor at this particular stage, maybe B15 or any other part of the world, would invest into FDs and retain the capital? My first question.
I just want to lean on the to put the facts in place.
I don't agree that people have lost 50%, 60%. Yes, they lost in 2008 and they recovered it in 2010. And the point is that yes, a large crop of new investors who came and invested for the first time in infrastructure fund, they lost and they have not been able to recover it. That is to the tune of, and those investors, that's very disappointing. But that was about 25 to 30,000 crore which came in 2008 or 2007. And that has, and it has gradually depleted over time, and investors have also pulled out. So that is a pain point, certainly. But it is not about, that is, your argument is not valid about the whole equity fund universe.
See, the thing is, I think the questions as well as the answers have been brought in by the panel while we were discussing. Now, it is very difficult to point out this is the best thing to do, so therefore put all your money there, right? The core and satellite approach to investing has been known, I mean, with a point that Hansi brought out as well. More importantly, it is about the market. The same investor who tells you that he has made no money on mutual funds, I will give it to you in writing. The next bull run will tell you, you left me behind at deposits, the market has gone up. Asset allocation is the answer. If you're looking to earn a stable return in investing, forget mutual funds. If you want your wealth to grow, if you like a certain stable return, and if you like to manage downside risks, you need to have your money in multiple assets, because at a time when equity was not doing well, debt has been doing well. And at a time when equity and debt both were in a problem, gold has been doing well. So, asset allocation, it's the only free lunch. Diversification is the only free lunch in investing, where your downside risks can be managed by building a diversified portfolio. I can't hold myself back from some one not very palatable comment to make here. If your investor has lost money, hand on heart, advisors sitting here should ask, what did they sell to them? The largest amount of money mobilized by the mutual fund industry, all of us sitting here know, has come from NFOs. So we have had a period of selling wrong products to the investor. I think we have to admit it. If we don't admit it in this forum, we can't admit it anywhere else. So that's the sad truth. So let's correct it. I'm not saying let's go back. Let's correct it. You know, the regulator has nudged us away from that, and let's correct it. And today, I know that there is a large number here which is carefully selecting products, which are returning fund salesmen telling them, I'm not going to recommend this to my investor, I'm going to recommend this instead. So I think over a period of time, when investors are able to experience market returns, they will make that allocation. They will decide how much in deposit, how much in mutual funds. It's not either or. It's a question of how much here and how much there. Right? And in a down cycle, sir, if it is raining and you want to see a patch of the blue sky, I can't help you.
My another question was regarding the regulations, the regulatory part. Today, like from past couple of years, we see every now and then, every day there are new regulations put in. The latest on the EUIN number. Don't you think the EUIN number is tightening hands with each and every one? One thing. As an IFA, a person who is practicing individual and not into corporate, who does not have any subventions into him, why does he require an EUIN? First, is MP challenging their own number, ARN?